Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How we doing today? Kasim, Sohit, Lamuel, my guy. um, how are we today? Just a normal day in the United. Oh, there's not a chance, Anthony. There is not a chance of a normal day in the United fan base. There's just no chance. Can't happen. Cannot happen. One normal day cannot happen. How was the interview? The interview. The interview. What interview? What was the interview? Cancel dinner, James was cooking. I like that. Cutting back on the airfares. I doubt that, since they all fly on the same plane. I doubt that that's the reason. We were just talking. Okay. Did you send it in the wrong place? Does someone else you know have an interview? Hopefully it goes well for them. But how you guys doing today? Good? Everybody? Catching a James live for the first time. Well, welcome. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. While we're here and people are making their way downtown, walking fast, make sure to like the stream, the video, like it, share it, do all of that. Do all the things that I'm supposed to ask you to do as a YouTuber. Turn on your notifications. Do all of those things. That all is good for me. Very helpful for me. I have a little bit of a cold, so if I'm just slightly clearing my throat and things, that's why. A little bit of a cold today. Just I tell you, nothing makes you feel the day you have a kid and they go to school. From that moment on, you will never again feel invincible. I hadn't gotten sick for like, I don't know, something like 6 years. I honestly, like 5-6 years, I had not even gotten a cold. And then once you get a kid in school, every winter, you're just like always running through just the nastiest things. The nastiest things. This man has been on a straight content here this year. Well done, sir. Thank you, money. The club is sinking. We're all gonna die. It's all doom. Yeah. Can we have another PowerPoint today? It's why you're here. I mean, yeah. I could pull up my PowerPoint from yesterday, though I haven't made a new one. It does crack me up just how much people have liked these PowerPoints that I've been doing. It's so funny. I mean, it is a way, I think, a unique way of getting getting through like educational content in a way that isn't the same, like it's kind of fun. I've kind of enjoyed them. You hadn't been sick for 10 years before your sister had kids and they got school age. Now you get sick every time, man. Every time. You thought the financial video yesterday was superb. Great. I appreciate that. With all the strikers we're looking at, why isn't Hugo Ekiteke looked at? And why is Ruben reluctant to fill the bench voids with more youth? Thank you for those questions, King Ragnar, and the donation. I definitely want to talk about that. On Ekiteke, United did look at him a few years ago and had actually a decent look. Then there was some weird things, right? He got signed by Newcastle, right, and then PSG, but there was weird questions over some of his behavior, attitudes, like personality. He was very questionable on the like those checks of that. Like there was serious questions about things like that. Um, very pleased for you, James. My wife's from Texas. There's too many people on here who live on the other side of the world who know that is true. That is true. That is true. Been watching you since the takeover. Can't believe I finally caught you live. Well, welcome, Caleb. Good to see you. So, I don't know the reason for it exactly on Ekitiki, but I do know that we looked at him and there were concerns over a few different issues with him. He's had a weird career bouncing between, the new, whatever happened with Newcastle, I don't really remember, PSG and all of that. And now he's performing, but man, Frankfurt makes me nervous with their strikers. I mean, I get, you have like Marmouche who's come from over there and has done well, but they've had like 10 strikers come from there that have all bombed in other leagues. So I don't know. I don't know, but maybe United looked at him in the past, so I'm sure they're still keeping tabs. I'm sure they're still keeping tabs on him. They tend to do that, and you know what's weird? Why is everybody 80 million? Why is every striker in football 80 million? And the thing with that is like that's why I'm kind of of the opinion, like, if you're gonna go buy a striker, you got to get like the absolute like best possible. Because I swear every good forward prospect is like 80 million euros. It's like it's going to be 80 million euros. Like that's what we paid for Højlund. And when it doesn't work out, it's an absolute disaster. So, if you're going to spend that money, you get Osimhen probably. If you're not going to spend that money, then you got to go spend 30, 40 million on someone decent. Otherwise. And so, yeah, I mean, logically, that makes a lot of sense. Opinions on the protest. I mentioned it in the last couple of videos as well that I'm definitely support United fans protesting the Glazers and pushing for them to sell the club. They should keep doing that. I think that's the right focus. I think that's the thing that should be focused on. But we also have different views on the routes and things that are happening and directions that things are going. Like I've said many times, whatever is being done by INEOS and all of that, the end result of all of it has to be they take control from the Glazers long term. And if that doesn't happen, then it'll be a failure. Because there's no long-term stability that can be had without that. But on that basis, I kind of explained this in one of the recent financial videos, is that I don't see what the upside is for the Glazers to hold on to the club right now. I don't see the positives of that for them. The club is cash poor. It's not profitable. Can't take dividends. You have the major debts that are going to have to be refinanced in a couple of years if they are not paid off. You have stadium that's likely going to take money from the club as well. It could be 7 to 10 years before United are technically profitable. And even then, the amount of money that they would make from that said profit, it would take them 100 years to make enough money that for what they would get from selling their shares in the club. It would take a lot of money for them to make that. Their profit comes when they sell, and they'd make a hell of a lot more money cashing in on another 2.5 billion and investing that in if you're rich in the U.S. Man United is a bad, like, United was a great investment. They invested very little, virtually nothing, and it's reached where it is. But the football club's values are not going to keep on that trend. The bubbles kind of happened in football. The huge inflation from 2005 to now, it's been pretty flat for football clubs for the last 5 to 7 years. The club isn't going to see this massive increase in value over time. It's a little bit saturated in that respect. It's not going to double and triple in price again. And even then, given the ages and things like that, at this point, for them financially, it's better off to sell, take the money and invest it in the US, because when you have that much money, you can make huge amounts of it from investing in the US. I mean, you could buy, there's a lot of other things that they could invest in, let's just put it that way, in the US that would make them more than holding on at United. But I do firmly believe, are they banking on the World Cup increasing US interest? Potentially, but I don't think that will have any impact on the value of Manchester United. They've put zero effort ever into spreading United in the US, into like promoting it in the US in terms of events, in terms of things like that, all of that. They've never invested in that. In anything like that. They don't seem to have any interest in that. So I don't even think they think that way. I think that what they need to do is to I think what they intend to do, frankly, and I do think what will happen, is that over the next year they will sell. They will sell more of the club to INEOS. And I think that there's a potential way where, yes, obviously they could see a higher valuation of the club with a new stadium and things like that, and it'll be worth more. But how are you paying for that? Because if you get a new stadium, but then you're responsible for $1.5 billion in debt, plus the $600 million you're responsible for, you're not going to gain more than that. You know what I mean? Like the how would I put it? Like, let's say right now the club, they could sell the rest of their shares. I think it's for something like $3 billion. Maybe no, it's probably a little less. It's like, I think it's about $2 billion they could sell the rest of their shares for. If you get a new stadium and you're then responsible for 2/3 of a $1.5 billion in debt, that's another $1 billion in debt you're now responsible for. You have to bet on the club increasing by more than 50% in value. For that, because you're not going to sell the club and have somebody else take on the debts. That's not how it works. Why would somebody do that? Why would anybody buy the club at an inflated value and take the debt on? They're not going to. It would have to include the payoff of the debt, because otherwise you're not getting a stadium. If you have to buy the stadium as if you have to buy the club with an inflated value of the stadium, but the debt remains, you've just double paid for the stadium. You're paying for the debt and the value of the stadium. That doesn't make any sense. Nobody's going to pay for the debt and the stadium. That's double paying. Someone will pay for one, but then they're going to have to cover the debt on the debt of the stadium is going to have to come out of that, right? So that it's a debt free, because, it doesn't make sense otherwise. It'd be like if you went to buy a house and you paid $500,000 for the house and got your loan for $500,000, and then you also took on the mortgage on the house of $400,000 that the previous owners have. You wouldn't do that. Nobody would do that. That doesn't make sense, right? So if you take a loan out to finish the basement in your house to increase its value, you're still responsible for that loan when you sell it. Even if it increases the value, you're still responsible for the loan. So you're going to have to bet that loan is less than the increase in value that you're going to get on the house. And in many instances, it isn't, by the way, on investing like that, at least in the short term. For the Glazers, maybe they think it would be that $1 billion in debt, they could get more than $1 billion more in the club, but that's a risky investment, because they're on the hook for $1 billion. That's actually a risk-taking behavior, is to do that, is to take out $1 billion and be responsible for $1 billion more debt, and then bet you're going to get paid more than that. That is risky behavior. And so again, but when you look at cash flows, things like that, it's not sustainable. The club cannot actually afford the debt being refinanced at double the interest rate. Right now, it's actually semi-manageable at 20 million or so, 15 to 20 million, that base debt. if we can get the club back to being books balanced where you don't have the extra debt on top. But if that balloons up to 40, 50 million, and then you need loans on for the stadium, it's another 50 million, the club can't afford that. They're not going to be able to no matter what. There's just no way to make the kind of revenue and be competitive. It's impossible. So there really isn't a world where it makes financial sense when you look at it for the Glazers not to sell. Now, what I think they might do, it's kind of complicated. I'm not sure that they will do this. It's just a possibility in a way that the stadium could be leveraged is, because the only person who's going to probably be willing to overpay is INEOS. You understand that, right? The only people that are going to be willing to overpay for the Glazer shares are INEOS. Understand that. That's why this is not about, like, that's why I'm completely very, very far against some of the things that are being spoken about like that. People have to realize nobody else was willing to overpay for United on earth. That is a fact. Than INEOS. INEOS were the only people willing to overpay and meet the Glazers' price. Again, to try and buy the club. There were other people doing, like I said, private equity firms, things like that, that would have taken bites out of the club and things like that to keep it afloat. But INEOS were the only people willing to actually own and run the club as a football club and overpay for its value because they're not looking for a profit, because it's a legacy type of thing. So Jim Ratcliffe's the only person who probably will be willing to overpay. So I could see a situation where an avenue where he buys a good chunk of the club, another chunk of the club, let's say another block of the club for $1.5 billion, and that money stays in the club and it goes to the stadium. Now you'd say, well, why would the Glazers do that? I would say it's on the basis that they would get overpaid for the other half of their shares later on down the road or something like that. That they end up making enough money and getting the stadium and anyway, there's just a lot of complications in all of this, but I think there is a way that it can get done. But to get it out of the hands of the Glazers, someone's going to have to overpay. And the only person willing to do that is INEOS. That's why I think it's a bit silly to push. Not to push, but to be a bit too... I think United fans are being a little bit naive about the reality of the situation here. If INEOS decide they don't want to buy the club, it's screwed. You realize that. If INEOS decide it's not worth the trouble and Sir Jim decides it's not worth the trouble, United are fucked. I mean, people really don't have to understand that. The Glazers can keep it going. It's not like they don't have the money to keep it going. They can. That's my concern on it. Hey, Jimmy. That is my concern. In general. Like, people are not really, I think people are just a little bit naive on this. If Sir Jim and INEOS back out, it's over. It's really over. Like, if they think it's not worth the trouble of buying United, I don't think people realize just how bad it gets for United at that point in time. And I'm not saying that means you shouldn't protest. I'm not saying that means people shouldn't voice their concerns. Like I've said, I think they'd be, at the same time as doing that, they can't be stupid. It's not the right time to raise ticket prices, things like that. I totally in agreement with all that things, because it's not the fans' fault, right? There's things that need to be resolved, and the punishment shouldn't be put on the fans for that, because they're not at fault for that. So I think it's important for them, as part of running this club, to not be stupid and to do their best to not do things like that and alienate fans. But at the same time, I don't think, I think people gotta calm down on a few other aspects of their management and what they're doing, because it is necessary. But yeah, look, it's a legacy project. It's a place to go. that doesn't, and there's, it's a legacy project. Nobody else was willing to pay that kind of money who was not, like private equity. So that should be pretty concerning, because without this, it would be in far worse hands for different reasons. And if they decide not to move forward with plans that they have, I think we'll be in real trouble. It would be in real trouble. That's all I would say about it. Because I think it would just be bit and pieced out until complete disaster, and then maybe it would be sold to somebody else. But I think it's 5 more years then without a stadium. At that point in time, it gets really ugly, trying to figure out how the club claws back from that. And I think it's a lot worse than people would imagine, because there's not some wealthy benefactor out there who's going to pay the price that they want. And the Glazers, as it has shown, are all too happy to let the club fall into almost ruin. I don't think they would care. They didn't invest enough in the club to care if it falls off, But ideally, that means that they would sell. So yeah, that's my view on it. So none of it is in misalignment with protests and things like that, because the right goal is for the Glazers to sell the club, and I do think they will, because it makes financial sense for them to do so. That's where I am at on it. But okay, let's get into some of the important things that we want to discuss for today. The budget. Obviously, I did a video yesterday talking about how United had planned for. I was talking about this last week, right? I was talking about all the the wage cutting, the things like that will happen, that put United in a situation where that they can afford to spend this summer. Wait, okay, sorry. I was just trying to show the little slide that I had, just so we could look at it again, what I went over yesterday. So just about like if we miss Europe and all of that, like what's going to happen, and how we cut wages last year, and so about this summer, about how we're shifting out an enormous amount of wages. And this is all a part of the planning. Would they let it completely fold? No, but like, it's not like United could just go back to endless mediocrity. You know what I'm saying? Like, just bearing in mind for a second, Jimbo, like, if you look at the realities of it, if it weren't for COVID, we probably would have continued forever in endless mediocrity. They only lost too much money for the club to become unsalvageable because of COVID. When Ed Woodward left, there was still like 300 million in the bank. But the losses over the COVID seasons and things actually kind of compounded with some bad transfers at the same time. They spent recklessly, and then and there was also COVID, because they figured the Super League was going to bail them out. So they would have done things a bit differently if not for that. And that would have changed things quite a bit. So once the books are balanced, if INEOS if INEOS backed out, if the Glazers kept it going, they would probably just go back to the same concept: buying these older players, getting these borderline top 4 finishes regularly, getting Europa and Champions League money, and doing the bare minimum. And the club would sustain at that mediocrity forever. That's why the Glazers have to leave at the end of all of this, because they probably could do that. They probably could do that if they wanted to. But anyway, I was just the video yesterday showing this budget. We're clearing out all of this, blah, 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 and how we can get young players coming in. And with the limited budget that we have, we could get young players coming in, talking about the way that we've poorly built the team for ages, talking about the declining squad. I thought this was a pretty interesting demonstration, just looking at this in general, of how we have so much decline in the team. And like, obviously an optimal team is going to have a lot of like really good players that are in their prime. Not all young potential players, like the example I gave here of where we could end up this summer, but at the same time, because we haven't done it right, we kind of probably need to overcorrect and go this way. So yeah, anyway, this was the whole explanation, that I was giving on the budgets and the planning and things like that. And so if you didn't watch that video, I definitely recommend watching it, because I tried to explain it really, really well. So that's yeah, and Sheikh Wasim, no Sheikh Wasim. Again, if you go back to the last bids that were made, and you look at some of the reports from the SEC filings, from Telegraph, from all of that, like I said before, regardless of your thoughts on everything, Jassim and such never made a legal bid for the club. Their last bids were still two-tiered, meaning they were offering more money for the Glazer shares and a lot less for those Class A public shares on the market. INEOS already had a deal for that lined up on that basis, and it was blocked. So it would have been sold in full if that was possible. Qatar knew this. Sheikh Jassim knew this. And that's what is part of the evidence, I would suppose, of them not being serious, because they never actually made a bid that would be acceptable to United. When INEOS were blocked from doing that, they started working on it and figuring out a way around it, and eventually ended up where they were at. Even though they wanted put and calls, those were also illegal. So they said, fine, we'll just do it the way that it is, and we'll have to look at deals down the road to do more. If you don't make a legal bid for something, did you really make a bid for it? Were you really serious? That's the kind of scary part about all of this, is that there was nobody else to buy. It was private equity or it was INEOS. That's a bit that is the worrisome situation. Yeah, the Glazers would have loved to sell it to Qatar. I mean, they had lots of business stuff over there. They don't even like Sir Jim when they first met him and spoke to him. Like, it's not what they think, but there was just not a bid. There was just not a legal way for them to get through that. Anyway, regardless, the planning has been done for the summer at the minimum viable level, that if we don't make anywhere in Europe, that we can still spend the money on the budget. Now, what that means for summer is, of course, that we're going to be buying young players. We're going to be buying young players on lower wages and things like that. So we know, like with Kenda, this is a deal. This is a deal that this is a deal that has been in progress for a while and is probably about as well lined up as it can be. He's still only 17. He'll be 18 soon. And so we expect him to be set to join in summer. Yeah, at the end of it, we know. So we'd expect him to join in summer, but I as I kind of showed in that presentation, it's realistic that we're going to be looking at a lot of young players, and I'll probably go back to my list and put more focal points on the young players, because from the conversations I had again in the last few weeks in speaking to people with the Vivel appointment and all of that, it was affirmed to me more than it was before that it's going to be younger, more affordable players coming in this summer. And it makes sense given the budgeting for not being able to make it into Europe and having to spend that. That's what they're going to have to do. We'll see how it works. But, like I said, when you go back and you look at like all the players leaving, and you just have to ask yourself this question: if instead of Eriksson, Heaton, Evans, Lindelof, Casemiro, Anthony, Malacia, and Rashford, who are not here at the moment, a few of them, if instead of those, who are every one of them on between 50 and 250 and 350,000 a week, instead of those, if you had 8 players who were like Dorgu, 20 million, 25 million on 50,000 young physical players, would we be better or not? For now, would we be better? Probably yes, because all those 8 players are not here or have already fallen off. That's why we're so bad this season. We don't have the bailout players that we used to. Like I said, was saying in that thing, we don't have the Cavani's to bail us out, the Casemiro's bailing us out, even the Rashford's bailing us out, even our best players in their right age, Rashford of the last few years, Rashford, Lissandro, etc. There's other situations going on. They're not here bailing us out. The only one is Bruno, and he's still bailing us out. So if we had 5 more of those, then we'd be doing a lot better right now, but we just don't have them. They've all fallen off. Every one of them has declined or left or been injured for one reason or another besides Bruno. Every one of our players. Mason Mount, right? Luke Shaw. He at least was like playing a lot during Ten Hag's first season, right? So the last season and this has been so bad because in a large part because we've seen a decline of players who of our prime players turning into declining players, our declining players being absolutely finished, and we have ended up with some good young players, not enough of them, and one good player in their prime age right now, just one. And that is really, really rough. It can go bad if we sell all the experienced players. It totally can, right? And look, that is a concern that I have on this, right? Because you know, but at the same time, the problem is we don't have any experienced players worth keeping. You know, I don't think Casemiro is making it any better for the young players. He's making it harder when he plays more often than not. You know, you're asking guys like when you watch on the pitch, you're looking at guys like Xerxes, who was going to Chido, patting him on the head, reassuring him all of that, while he was, you know, as another young player to be the leaders on the pitch because I don't see a lot of those older players doing it. You know, our experienced players are bad. You know, that's why, again, why I've people can argue with me all they want on this, but it's why I really like Harry Maguire. He's one of the only remaining experienced players besides Bruno who acts like a leader, and people for some reason refuse it, but he does. He talks, he reassures. He's known very well to be good in training on this point. You could see like after Ipswich, him and Bruno talking, they're the only 2 players left that I would keep because of their leadership qualities and experience that they bring to the table. They do that, and they're both valuable in that respect. It would be worth having more experienced players in the team if they were actually providing value, you know, but they don't. It's kind of like Arsenal, right? Like Arsenal kicked out a lot of their experienced players because they felt that they were kind of toxic. I kind of count De Ligt in the he's kind of going into prime age, to be fair, but he's on the younger category. Mazraoui too, to be fair. Mazraoui rate really highly, but we just signed him. I think that's a good example of the right of a decent signing of a player who's in that like 25 to 28 age bracket where they bring experience, they bring quality, but you didn't pay massively for them, right? And you didn't pay massive wages and you haven't put yourself in big trouble. But yeah, there's just not enough leadership in there. There's not enough of that in there in the team. So there's not that much value in the experience that we have left at the club right now, unfortunately. And so it makes the most sense to move pretty much all of them on. It's not doing much for us now. So it's going to be a tough one. And I think that, you know, again, I look at, like, I made a comparison about last summer and the last 5 or 6 transfers to the ones before that, because people have been pretty down on last summer and the transfers that were made. And while I don't think that they were good enough, like long term, it's actually a big step in the right direction when you look at that. Look at the last 6 transfers that we made, or 5 transfers that we made. Patrick Dorgu, Ugarte, Mazraoui, De Ligt, Yoro. Those are the last 5, because I think Xerxes was first, right? So Dorgu, Ugarte, Mazraoui, De Ligt, and Yoro. 5 players. Well, week in and week out, now, Dorgu's just joined, obviously. Those 5 players are playing, they're contributing, and they tend to be some of our better players. Look at the 5 before that. Just make the comparison to the 5 before that, before overthinking those players. It's bad. It's really bad. Mason Mount, Onana, Højlund, Casemiro, Antony. Those are the 5 signings before that. Just understand that. Compare that. Mason Mount doesn't play. Onana throwing the ball in the net worse than De Gea ever has. Højlund, probably the worst striker in the Premier League right now, actually. When you look at the stats of it, there was a graphic the other day. He is literally 81st out of 81 for duels. 81st out of 81 for duels in the Premier League. Holy shit. And he was 72 million. Okay, but then you have to look at the money. 60 million for Mount, who doesn't play. 60 million for Onana, who's chucking in the net. 72 million for Højlund, who's one of the worst strikers. Casemiro was good for a season, but 60 million and 350,000 a week, and Antony for 82 million. So we spent double the money for those 5 players. Understand that. We spent double the money and double the weekly wages. Okay, double the money and double the weekly wages. All right. Double the money and double the weekly wages for that, compared to Dorgu, Ugarte, De Ligt, Mazraoui, and Euro. Double the money and double the weekly wages. So was last summer the best? No. Was last summer a massive improvement? Yes. If we had another summer like last, where you got 5 more players of that quality to replace the players that aren't doing anything, then would we be better? Yes. But we need more like Dorgu and Euro, in my opinion, who are both, I think, going to be top level players. We need more like them, and are on very low wages relative to everything too. So it's an interesting experience. Yeah, and they're not going to decline. That's the other part of it, right? They're on good wages. They're not the best players, but they're on good wages, and they're on the upward trends. Dorgu's going to get better as a footballer. Ugarte will get better as a footballer as well. De Ligt will probably get better as a footballer. Euro will definitely get better as a footballer, and even Xerxes. How much has Xerxes come on, even in the last month, since finally starting to settle in at United? He's actually looking like a competent footballer for 35 million. And a decent one at that, as far as number 10 goes. Does he need to do more? Yes, it would help if we had good attackers around him too. But look at how they are stepping up. All of them are improving. And from a year, Xerxes 23 for a striker that is young also, and he's improving dramatically since he first came in, in this number 10 kind of role. He's so integral. He's been so integral to the link up and play and things like that. And you want to see more, but we will get more. I think when at its end of all of this, that summer will actually look pretty darn good, all things considered. I think it's going to have really helped build a core of a team that next season those players will all get better and better. So in that respect, it was an improvement, but we need more. Rasmus is also only 22. The problem is he's getting worse, not better. I actually thought he was decent last season. Rasmus is picking up more and more bad habits. That's the concern right now. It's not like that he's the finished article. It's that his trend is down for a young player, and that's not good. And so from a transfer perspective, you can say when you cost that much money and a player is declining, it's pretty poor. It's pretty poor. So, anyway, I think it'll be better in the long run. It'll be better. It'll look better. In the long run, the longer it goes on, things will look better with the signings that we've made. And I think by end of season, Lenny Yoro is going to be nailed on as a long-term starter, and he's already looking so much better, and he's so young. He will be one of the best center backs in Europe in the end. I think that that by the end of it, we'll be pretty happy with all of them as being starters to first rotations in the team. in the long run. And I think most of them will be pretty successful in that respect. But we do need more. We need more to grow. We need more improvement. We need more players on the upswing. But the important thing to note is that every one of the players that we signed will probably be better next season than they are this season. It's a lot of it is the fact that we had all our good players decline and leave. And so now you've got these guys who should have had adjustment periods that are coming in and expected to perform right away, and you have a manager change. So they're starting to tick on. They're starting to improve week by week. Most all of them, I think, are starting to improve week by week. But it's a rough transition. If we didn't need all of them to start, does that mean our window will be brightened like this summer? Not necessarily. Yeah, look at Caicedo and Gravenberg. Right, they were not so great, but now they're some of the best. It's a very good example. Players aren't always instantly ready. So I think the good part is these players will step up their levels next season. We'll have another preseason with the manager, all of that. Not another preseason with the manager, all of that. So we will be better. And then the new players will come in to a bit more of a settled team. But I think that we'll obviously the difference between us and Brighton is we'll still be able to do things like very often like Kenda, all of that. But yeah, I think we'll get more similar players to Xerxes, to Yoro, to Dorgu this summer. That's what we will be getting, is a lot of those this summer. And so I'm really, really interested to see it. I mean, I think that we will see yeah, I mean, Brighton look, I put a thing together of what Brighton's team looked like if they didn't have to sell, and it's arguably a top 4 team. A midfield of Balaba, Caicedo, McAllister. It is quite literally, arguably, a top 4 team. If you didn't have to sell. If you didn't have to sell. If they didn't have to sell their players. And if we finish 10th, then we finish 10th. If we finish 10th with the youngest team in the league, then we finish 10th with the youngest team in the league. I don't think we will, but that all remains to be seen. 10th would be an improvement over last season and this season in terms of performance if we actually had deserved it. Similar players to the players we start every week and can't win with them. I think you're completely missing why United are so bad. Like, United are not so bad because of Lenny Yoro. They're not so bad because of Ugarte. They're not so bad because of, Dorgu when he's played a couple of games that he's played well in them. We're not bad because of those players. We're bad because in all the players' positions we didn't sign, we are absolutely horrifically bad. That's the actual truth of it. Look at who are the worst performers recently. It's like Casemiro, Onana, Garnacho, Højlund, all the positions we didn't sign players for. We're bad because of all the players we haven't signed yet, not because of the players we have signed. That's the truth of it. Nobody's winning with 5 players. Casemiro has played, though. He literally played against Everton and was one of the biggest reasons we sucked that game. We're not losing because of the 5 or 6 players that we brought in. We're losing because of the other 20 that we still have, that we have to turn around. Why would you say they're most likely ins for the summer are Kenda, Delap, Hackney, Nippon, Ignacio, and Trafford? Sure, I think some of those are realistic names. There's a lot of talk about Delap, and even though I have concerns, he's probably up there in terms of likely striker signings. Kenda, Delap. I don't think we'll sign Ignacio, but and I really don't know about Hackney and Nippon. I just know they're of interest. I think Trafford is a real possibility. Yeah. So it is what it is. Casemiro versus Liverpool at home was the worst performance in football history. Yeah, it was pretty bad. I'd rather see. I would too, and my hope is that when it comes to the league, we'll talk about the youth stuff in a minute here. Because I have some thoughts on this, and I want to know. I want to discuss. Like the short bench. You know, the short bench, things like that. All of those kinds of things. Did they do the presser already? Anyway, I want to talk about some of that and share my because I have questions about it, but I'm not going to pass judgment instantly. But I do have concerns about it as well. And I have things that I want to know. So it's going to be a while. It's going to be a few hours to the presser, so we won't get answers from Amram on that yet. But yeah, when you look at it, we are bad because of all the positions we haven't signed, where we have remaining players from before and where we've lost players. That is the reason we are bad. I don't look at the team and go, you know why we're bad? Because of Lenny Oro. Because of Dorgu. No, we were bad because we've had to play Dallo at left back all this time. That's a big reason why we've been bad, because we didn't have Dorgu. The minutes Dorgu played, we looked a hell of a lot better. We're not bad because of Ugarte. He's been a huge improvement on Casemiro last season. We're not bad even because of Xerxes. We're bad because our goalkeeper's chucking in the net, because we only have maybe one good center back in the team in Euro. De Ligt has done pretty well. I wouldn't say we're bad because of De Ligt too. I mean, look at how we played against Fulham the other night. He was, he was doing look at when Lindelof came on. He got killed instantly and De Ligt had to bail him out. I mean, literally Lindelof came on and you saw that's what bad looks like, okay? But that's what's in the team half the time. We're bad because our striker hasn't scored a goal in 20 games, and our left winger hasn't either. And because we don't have any forwards, and because our best player in the forward line, Ahmad, got injured for the rest of the season. It's not to say that that the players that we've brought in are all absolutely good enough, but the worst performers are mostly the players that have been here for multiple years, unfortunately. The players we still have to move on and the positions that we haven't signed in. That's the reason. Nobody wins with 4 or 5 players. Nobody does. It's just silly. Yeah, I think De Ligt's been quite good. Mazraoui's been quite good. Ugarte's been quite good. None of those guys are playing at a level of like a 15th when you compare them. None of those guys are playing at that level of like 15th. The people who are playing really, really bad are mostly people who haven't played, who have been here for a long time. Those are the worst performers in the team right now. Lissandro, we were like, when you look at it, we were definitely winning a lot more games with Lissandro and Ahmad when they were here. We were doing definitely better when they were here. Missing both of them has definitely hurt us. No doubt about that. There's no doubt about that has hurt, because the backup options and what we're forced to do outside of that is we don't have them. We've completely stopped scoring goals since Ahmad has gotten injured. So it's unfortunate. But yeah, nobody wins with 4 or 5 players. There's 4 or 5 good players on every team that gets relegated. Ipswich are going down. Does that make Delap the worst striker in the league? That he's awful? No, he's going to get signed by a good team. There's good players at every single team. Wolves are awful and people are begging for Cunha. So I guess you cannot buy anybody from a lower team. There's a bunch of teams in the championship that sell players to the Premier League every single year. You cannot take that view. You cannot take that view at all. The view that just because we're low means every player is bad is really overly simplistic and stupid. It's overly simplistic and stupid because you get good players coming from bad teams all the time. All the time. Most players who get signed by big teams are coming from teams lower in the league. How is that possible if they're all bad? So you can never sign anyone from a non-top 6 team, if you think about it, if the logic goes that way. That every team that's poor means every players are poor. All the players in the team are poor. You're not thinking right. So tell me who you'd want to sign, and they better be from Arsenal or Liverpool, or they're shit. Just give me that answer. Arsenal or Liverpool or they're shit. Based on that logic. Tell me who you want us to sign this summer. And if they're not from Madrid, Arsenal, or Liverpool, they're shit. Because I don't rate any other teams in Europe right now. I don't even rate Arsenal like that. You know? So think with that logic. Just tell me then who you would want to sign. Doesn't matter. Tell me who you would want to sign. Tell me who you'd want to sign. Go ahead. Who are the players that we should sign? That are realistic to sign. That you rate. And they better all be from only top teams. Only top teams. That's it. Yeah. Should left center back really be a priority? Heaven, Kukonki, Maz. Well, Kukonki's a ways off. Kukonki's going to be multiple years off. Mazraoui, now Yoro, all good. Licha will come back. It's a good question, King Ragnar. So I'm thinking about it this way. We have next season. We will have Maguire, Lenny Yoro, Mazraoui, and then Heaven. I think, right? Lissandro will be injured till probably mid-season. So, and Delict. So that's 5, but it's 6 positions. And Heaven isn't that proven. We need 1. It doesn't necessarily have to be left, but do bear in mind that long-term, Amram really likes a left-footed left center back. Okay? So he would like to have Yoro on the right in the long term. He'd like to have Mazraoui on the right in the long term. He'd like to have Delict and Maguire probably in the middle. So on the left, he has Aiden Heaven, but we need a starting level left center back, most likely. Well, Onana, he came from Everton. They were nearly relegated. He's shit. He's crap. Cunha comes from a team that is below us in the table. He's also shit. We can't sign him. We can't. So just bear that in mind. We can't sign those players. They're shit. They're on teams that are bad. So we can't sign them. They're all bad on that team. Like I said, they're not from Liverpool or Arsenal, then they're bad. That's what you've just said. Because we are low in the table, all our players are bad. So that must be true for everybody else. You got to apply the same logic to from United to other clubs. If United's players are bad and they're in 15th, and that means everybody playing is bad, then that same goes for everybody else. It's the same logic has to apply to other clubs. Sebastian, you've contacted United trying to partner here in Miami to start a youth academy. They said it could be interested. Do you think it's worth it to try? Yes. If you ever want to contact me, I have good contacts at the club that I could help with this. Send me an email or something, Sebastian, if you want, and I'd be happy to talk with you about this and see if there's anybody I can point you in the right direction of to connect you with to see if there's any way to help. I would love United to be more invested in the United States. Barcelona, other clubs, German clubs and such have plenty of presence in the US these days, and it would be great for people to do that. Again, so you're saying when these players have been starting every game, we keep losing. Well, Cunha starts every game for Wolves and they're losing, so he's bad. It's the same logic. Onana started every game for Everton and we're losing. And they were losing, so he's bad. Again, you're not. You got your logical connection here is pretty bad. It's not making sense. It's not making any sense. Wolves are much worse than us, but Cunha plays every game, so he must be bad. It doesn't matter. I don't get it. Roy Keane was signed from a relegated team. No, he was shit. Don't forget that. If he was any good, they wouldn't have been relegated, obviously. Anyway, let's move. There's always some funny things like that just blow my mind. I can't think with them. They crack me up. Let's move on to Chido. Let's move on to Chido. Sanderberg is class, and I was actually pretty happy with him. If you remember, I made a video about Sanderberg at the time, talking about him and Ugarte and their profiles, and I think people are maybe going a little bit over the top on it because of that game, because he's been decent. He's been decent in general. He's not actually that dissimilar to Ugarte. I'm in respect, but I would have liked him too. I think he would have been a good signing as well. I like him. Nah, Hamza, we're not doing that, because the last time we played Everton, we ran all over them. So we're not doing that. You're not saying way better player because of one game when you haven't been watching Everton. He's been good this season, not at all great. And the last game we did significantly better than Everton and won the game quite handily. So we're not doing that. On Chido, so obviously Chido's not with the Europa League squad. The plan with Chido originally was definitely not in the way, or Fulham, excuse me. I'm talking Fulham when I was saying Everton. I meant Fulham. Did I mean Fulham? Yes, I meant Fulham. We just beat Fulham not that long ago, and we did not get dominated in the midfield or anything like that. I kept saying Everton for some reason. I'm getting all my days and games mixed up on everything these days. But no, we're not going over it like one game is that significant of a thing. Chido will continue to bounce around a little bit, but Chido is definitely he cannot be in the Europa squad. So the reason is you get two lists. You get your list A and your list B. List B you can have unlimited amount of players on, and list B, to qualify, they have to have been at your club for 2 years and they're under 21 or whatever. So for list B, that includes the players who are in the academy and have been there for some time. Because we just signed Chido, then we cannot he cannot be included in list B. In list A, it was submitted 3 or 4 weeks ago. Aiden Heaven was signed to be a part of the first team, and he'd been there for a long. He'd been signed for the first team for quite a while. You have to understand that Chido was not supposed to be here that quickly, like at all. And he's come in under these circumstances and performed because our strikers have been just so bad. So bad. Between injuries and all of that, it's been so bad that he had to be in, that he's kind of been brought forward. It was not supposed to be. He really wasn't. By the end of the season, the goal was like Jack Fletcher, Chido, and Kone. They didn't want to put the overpressure, on Chido. But over the last 3 weeks in he wasn't even by the way, he had not even done a first team training actually by that point in time. I think Fletcher had. Over the last 3 weeks, he's just, due to everything that's happened, he's just kind of come on so strong. And that's great. And it's a little unlucky, but at the time, they did not plan to have him come into the team. And they were trying to take it slow to protect him, things like that. And so it is what it is. That's just, we just have to kind of accept that, unfortunately. Just a sort of it's a good and the bad. It's unlucky, but it's fine. He can play. He can play in. They had just moved Chido up to under 21s, I think, at that point. Like, just barely moved him up to under 21s at that point, if I'm not mistaken, where Jack Fletcher's been there for quite a while. He was bullying Bassi. I know. And look, like nobody, I can honestly say that Chido has massively exceeded expectations over the last 3 weeks with the first team for everybody involved. He's still got a lot to go, a lot to learn, but even with what he's done, he's exceeded expectations. Um, Even with what he's done, he's exceeded expectations. So it's just come on a lot faster, but they were trying to slow things down, round out his game, and protect him quite a bit more. So it's one of those things. It's just kind of unlucky, to be honest. It's unlucky, but should Chido be starting and such come Europa League if we get through rounds? No, I mean honestly, the fact that that's even under consideration has got kind of wild. But oh well. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. He's just impressed so much. It's just nobody expected it to be this fast, and they weren't planning on it being this fast. It's unlucky that he wasn't included in, but it wasn't necessarily the wrong call at the time. It's just fair play to him. Fair play to him for impressing and for doing what he's done and making everybody believe. Because not 2 weeks ago, all the channels, the guys on United View that I talked with, Flex, all of them, they're like, it's too soon. Chido shouldn't play. Let's not do that. Let's not throw him into the team. All of that. Everybody was mostly on board. Let's protect him. Let's do all of that. And now, just because he's impressed so much, everybody's like, well, fuck it. I guess he should play. So it wasn't objectively the wrong decision, but it's just unlucky. It's just unlucky. Rico, Rashford really went from under 18s to the first team. Here's the thing. Most of the best players go from under 18s to the first team. If you have to spend a long time at under 21s, you're probably not going to make it. You're probably not going to make it. It's not the wrong call that they included Jack Fletcher, because Jack Fletcher is probably the only player at under 21's level that probably could get into the first team in the near future. Otherwise, just to be real about in terms of how players are rated and stuff like that, that's the truth. Jack Fletcher is ahead of probably everybody else in the under 21s, besides Kone, who was just bought. Kamasan's still with the under 18s, mind you, but Kamasan's not playing with the under 21s. He's playing with the under 18s. Of the under 21s, Kone, who was just purchased, and Chido, who was just purchased, Jack Fletcher is probably the highest rated of the under 21s team. So, that's part of it as well. He is someone that is rated highly as potentially being able to make it forward through into it. But we'll talk about that in a second. So Chido will probably continue to be with the first team when it comes to the Premier League, and I hope he continues to get minutes there. Yeah, and Chido's big. I mean, he's got an interesting, he obviously is like, I'm not calling him languid. I'm not using that word. I'm saying he obviously does need to there's like a, maybe a fluidity in his movement that needs to come through with experience, because he's young and he's huge, and that will come with time of managing his body because he's so big, and all of that. And we can't add anybody else to list A. No, that's it. We only had the 3 spots to add. But yeah, I hope that he, he just maybe even slims a little bit because he's a bit stiff, but just a little bit stiff. But he's obviously a really, 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 really talented player. So it's obvious now that he's most likely to be. If he was available, I'm sure he would have been on the plane. If they could have had him for Europa, I'm sure he would have been on the plane. Speaking to the youth thing, I have there's a few views on this. Number one is like I said, they've been signing a lot of the under 21s level kind of players, because they don't really think most of them have it to make it into the team. That's a big reason for it. They haven't felt like they have enough of the players rated the way that they want at the under 21s level. There's a lot of talent at the under 18s level, but they're just not ready yet, to go. They're not ready to to make it into the team, at this point in time. So, we'll see what happens there. beyond that, um, yeah, we'll see. And then when it comes to that, it's gonna take time. When it comes to why not include most of these players onto the bench, or into the team, or something like that. I think the big question is on Europa, that I want to see answers from Amarim. Like, why not bring Morehouse? Why not bring Fletcher? Things like that. Um, I would rather they did. I would rather more of them got brought through. But I cannot say that I know why they haven't at this point in time. I can't say I know the reason that they haven't at this point in time brought them in further. I would like to see more of them come through. But I want to hear the reasons. I'm hoping that Amram gets asked some questions about it, because I do want to hear the reasons for it. Yeah, I want to know. I want to hear why. I want to find out. I'd like to see if there's a valid, you know, explanations for these things. So we'll see about that. Maybe simply that, in Amram's view, Jose Mourinho is kind of like this too. In Amram's view, he doesn't want to give out like free first team spots. His view may be slightly different, that you really have to earn it. You're not just going to get a spot on the bench because you can. That you really have to earn it. He's got his 5 subs that he's going to, if we make 5 subs, those are the 5 players he's going to sub on. Regardless, he's clearly made that decision ahead of time, and I think he pre-plans his subs a lot. You can kind of tell to some degree, barring like disasters. And he did do this before. He and 777 is correct on that. He did do this before. I was looking into it before the stream because I was questioning it this morning, and he did do that at Sporting. He wouldn't just fill the bench with academy players. And I think that his view is you've really got to earn that spot in the team. He doesn't give them out for free. It's a different view, but it's there. Now, one could say that that's not right. But at the same time, I look at it and I'm kind of like, what was the value? Because Ten Hag did it, Ollie did it, but did it ever actually have a positive impact on things, really? Like, when you look at the players they included on the deep bench, all of them are gone. None of them really ever ended up getting a chance. There are a few players who actually made it through under the last couple managers, were people you would expect it to. But beyond that, it's not like, most of them got ignored. I mean, even Ahmad was ignored. He wasn't even like a youth player. I guess my question is, I'm not sure it's that obvious that there's a benefit to it. I would like to see more youth in there. And in the league especially, the cup is still the cup. But in the league, since it's pretty much dead, I would like to see more youth getting chances. But the simple fact is, if he doesn't feel they have a future, he's probably not going to include them. That's the way that he looks at it. If he doesn't feel we have a future, then so be it. Ten Hag gave you chances. What does that mean, though? He brought through Mainu and Garnacho, which we were expecting, but what did he really give youth chances when you're talking about like all these other names and all these other people and everything? Did he really like give them a chance? Or did they get did they get some late periods and then they just got sold off? Like Zidane, like Iqbal. Like, there was a huge clamor about that, and then he's just gone. He literally ignored Ahmad. There's tons of players, Dan. But what happened with that? They're not, Collier actually didn't get debuts last season. He's here now, but he's 22. He didn't actually. Dan Gore's not here. It didn't do it. My point is, it didn't do anything. Like, you'd have to point me to the evidence that including them on the bench as late footballers, as like late ends of the bench, just for the experience, actually did anything for their careers. I don't see. I'm just saying, what's the evidence of that? that is for sure something that like for sure has an impact on it. Yeah, that's what fans like. It's fan service though, but it's not for sure that it's got an impact, you know. And then we gave chances to some guys like Forson and sold them off, and it was like they weren't even staying. So there's some of it is just like people just want it because it makes them happy, and I get that. I want to see more youth too, but it is fan service. Let's be real for a minute. It is fan service. If he doesn't rate them, why he shouldn't include them? That's how he's going to look at it. If I don't rate them, I'm not going to include them. It is what it is, you know, like that's his view. That's how he seems to manage. And it seems like he was consistent with that at Sporting. That's not the same necessary view of Ollie. That's not necessarily the same view as Ten Hag. It is a lot more similar to Jose in terms of how he acted. No doubt about that. Jose was pretty similar. You really do have to earn the spot for under Jose, same as you would have to earn, probably, it seems like you have to earn it under Amorim. My opinion is I would like to include more players. I would like to see more travel. But I don't know enough. I don't have enough evidence to say it's the right thing to do. Because I don't have enough evidence to say that it has a better impact on their careers when you do that. I don't have the evidence to say that. I think personally that more players should be included, but there's a difference between what I view as my opinion and being certain that that's the right course of action. He sees it that way. I wouldn't say we've had enough success either way to say we know what's happened, you know? I wouldn't say we have enough evidence to suggest that it does matter if we include them all on the bench or not. Amorim's view will probably be we didn't have any more subs anyway, Rico, if I'm not mistaken. But Amorim's view will probably be that it's more beneficial to make that spot in the first team something really hard and worth earning to get players to be motivated and work harder. That's going to be his view. We only have 5 subs. He has his 5 outfield subs, buddy. So it doesn't matter what happens. Nobody else he adds is going to play, no matter what happens. He will still only be making those 5 subs that he has named. So there's no danger in it from a playing perspective. There's none. It's the same as ever. He will sub those 5 players on, or a goalkeeper if one gets injured. It doesn't really matter. It's like either way, it's going to be the same players. So it's literally a discussion of should they bring them to sit on the bench, right? I think maybe that has value. That's my opinion. But I'm not going to sit and say that I know for a fact that that would be better than his view, which seems to be you've got to earn that spot. Don't know. Is it not demotivating to tell a player that you're too shit to make the bench even if we don't have enough players? Maybe. Or maybe it's motivating to tell them that you're not there yet and you need to work harder if you want to get into it. You can look at it both ways. This is sports. It's always going to be a little bit harsh. It's a difficult business to be in. My point is there are opinions, there are different philosophies on this. We don't actually know what's right. That's all. That's my point on it. We don't know what's right. So it's well worth sharing an opinion. But we don't know what is correct. If it's about Amorim, his approach. If it works, good. If it doesn't work, bad. That's all. You know, I don't think that Ten Hag doing it made fuck all of a difference, and I don't think Ollie made fuck all of a difference. I think they actually both were pretty poor with youth in general. I think we lost a lot of players under them. Ten Hag froze out guys like Ahmad and such. Ollie did the same, you know. Ollie did the same, so it's kind of like it is what it is. I don't know enough. I have had criticisms of all of them on handling youth. I was so mad that Angel Gomez ended up leaving without getting chances under Solskjaer. I was so mad about it. That Jimmy Garner didn't get chances under Solskjaer. I was mad. I was very mad about it because Jimmy Garner's a decent footballer. I was mad they didn't get more chances in the team. No, Ten Hag was bad with youth. He was absolutely bad with youth. I don't think he was like magical with youth because he brought through Menu and Garnacho. I don't think he was like suddenly amazing because of doing that. Because everybody knew that they were coming into the team. Now, he managed them well to a degree, except he burnt the shit out of Menu last season, so I wouldn't say he managed them well. But the management doing things like starting Forsen, there was a lot of bad decisions being made. They all make bad decisions. If Amorim doesn't rate those players, he doesn't rate them. And if he decides that he wants to set it up to where you get on the first team bench if he thinks you're good enough, then that's the way his approach to it is. I don't think we know enough to say if it's better or worse. So it is what it is. That is my point. I would lean opinion wise towards saying include more players. But I think it's wrong. It would be wrong to say that it's definitely better, objectively. Better to do that. We don't know that it's actually better to do that. He's got his approach. Others have their approach. We don't know enough to say that is better. That's why I'd like to hear his answer and confirm it. Like that's just his approach, that you've got to earn that spot, and so be it. So if not, then it is what it is. So against Sociedad, since we have literally no options, right? I think that our lineup is pretty much confirmed, unfortunately. We're not really going to do a vote for this because we only do that in the what do you call it, the thing. But given the players that are available, I don't actually think we have a choice anywhere in the team in terms of who we're playing, do we? Because Collier's back, but he just came back, so he's probably not starting. The only other option we could do is include Eriksson. I think that's the only thing we can do in terms of fit players, right? Is include Eriksson. I'm okay with this here, but there's just too many where it's like it sucks. It's a disaster. Yeah, like we could put Eriksson in the 10. Or put Eriksson deep and move Bruno up. I mean, the only thing is it's a slower pace in Europe, but you remember the Europa League game with Eriksson? He scored a goal, but got absolutely torched, right, at home. Who was that against? A really bad team. Was it a Dutch team? Was it his former team? Do you remember that game? That's my concern with it. Yeah, 20. That's my concern. Like, you can get away with more in Europe, despite what Anthony's agent will tell you. You can get away with a lot more in Europe. But yeah, you don't have a lot of choices here. Heaven at CM and Casemiro striker, I would support that. I would support that. I mean, this is probably the team. But Eriksson could be in it. And then you'd probably get on Collier. Ugarte should be fine. It's probably related to his last injury that he's just kind of being managed because he had to play a lot of minutes after coming back against Fulham and Ipswich. Yep. So, yeah, you just don't have a lot of options. You just don't have a lot of options. But it is what it is, isn't it? I think this is the team. I don't think there's another. Just I don't think there's anything else. I don't think there's another thing. Here's the funny part about the whole discussion, though, right? You go back to January. Let's hold on. Let's be real for a second. You go back to January. I guarantee you, the majority of you. Let's not be hypocrites. The majority of you, probably less than the average on like Twitter and places like that on my channel, because probably a little swayed by my opinions at time. Not that you should be. The majority of you, and definitely the vast majority of Twitter, would have been telling you a month and a half ago it's a disaster to sell Garnacho for 50 million to Napoli rather. And now people are like, oh, we should be starting Jack Fletcher over him. I guarantee that is hypocrisy. That is hypocrisy. That's the hypocrisy I can't get on board with. The amount of people I argued with about Garnacho where I said, probably should sell him. But that is hypocrisy. But I'm also not calling for Jack Fletcher to start. Or Højlund. No, if you go back a few months, people were not sold on Højlund, but there is no way people would have been saying bench him for a youth player in Europe. No way. No way. Isn't that just changing your mind when more info is processed? Yes and no. Yes and no. There is truth in that. The longer it goes on, as Højlund and Garnacho get worse, it definitely changes the thinking with it, for sure. But it's still a bit hypocritical, because the point was you could see it coming. And if he's that good of a talent, 1 month shouldn't change your idea. They're young players. If he's so good that we shouldn't be selling him, then 1 month shouldn't change your mind on that. And I'd also question how much people have actually watched Jack Fletcher to be making that claim, by the way, of that he should be playing. I'm sure some have here, but I think the vast majority don't watch much youth football to say he should be playing. So, I'm just saying, like, most people in the United fan base said Garnacho was a 70, 80 million. They were ranting about INEOS forcing out our best youth talents for profit. 1 month can't change your mind that much of bad form. 1 month cannot change your mind that much of bad form. And if you believe that, then Garnacho should still be playing. And that's fair if you believe that. Then Garnacho should still be playing, because there's no other way to get back into form, and we don't have other options. But you definitely wouldn't be benching him in Europe and an away game to debut a youth player who's never played before. Some of the academy would be better. I think presently it is seriously possible too, Saber. I don't disagree with you on that front. I really don't. But at the same time, it's not really the judgment of them as youth players. You know what I mean? Like, that is one factor on this youth thing, right? The judgment for youth players for getting into the team and becoming a part of the first team is not necessarily are they better than what you have. I mean, in the short term, it kind of is, but in the long term, there's a different standard to be set when you're trying to decide whether you're going to loan them, keep them, sell them. If it's just about being better than what we have, you'd probably that's how you end up keeping a ton of players you shouldn't from the youth levels. You could go put, I don't know who's even in the under 21s right now, but you could probably put a bunch of them in the squad and say, yep, they're better than what we have because we don't have anything or we have failing players. That doesn't mean that you should be keeping them. It just means that you need to build a better team. Like, there's still a standard for youth levels that has to be exceeded to get into it. But yeah, look, I mean, people are frustrated at the end of it. I'm frustrated too. I wish it was better at the moment, for sure. It's definitely kind of frustrating. But I think that it just means people are being overly reactionary to things that are probably not worth being overreactionary to. But it's just my opinion. Like I said, when you take this youth thing, I look at it and I go, there's different philosophies of it, and the downsides, if they play and they look absolutely horrendous, then it goes to show they're not ready. But it's also, again, the philosophy of it from an Amarim might be that it devalues the first team when you start doing that. It devalues it, and it makes it cheap to get into the first team, that it's not earned. It's just because the first team is shit that you're getting into the first team, that it's not a position to be earned. And you're talking about sport here and the facts of motivation. It's such a complex topic, and there's so many different opinions on this. There's so many different opinions on this. I would never claim personally to know the right answer on that, because you're talking about how to motivate human beings, young people, on how to become great. Some people's view will be, you have to earn it. No matter what the situation is, you have to earn it. If you get in there and you haven't earned it just because the first team is bad, well, then you're shit. Then that doesn't help you. Sometimes it, and I think there's borderline cases where you can see this has worked, right? But Rashford had earned a spot in being in the squad, at least, I think, by that point, even if he wasn't viewed as this crazy prospect. Chido had borderline earned that first team position from training and things like that to be in there. To get in there. Heaven was signed for the first team. When Mainu got in, he earned it. When Garnacho got in, he earned it. Most of the players have earned a spot in the team when they're in it. So again, it's about motivation. It's about communication. It's about management. There's so many factors that can come into this that, to some degree, I just think it's unfair to make objective claims about them. To make objective claims. I think it's unfair to make objective claims about certain things as to what the right answer is, but we just have to accept it and see. Amarim has been like this, and the funny thing is he does use youth a lot. At Sporting, he used youth plenty. But it's kind of an interesting concept, because it's like you can use youth, but also be highly demanding and not just be giving out tons of free chances to youth, right? You can demand an extremely high standard, but also use youth at the same time. So it depends. It's a tricky situation. It is hard to tell how it's what the right answer is. And then you can put a ton of youth in on what's it called, like on the bench, and not use youth. Like I said, I think Ten Hag was really poor at using youth. I also think Ollie was pretty poor at using youth, because it can look like you're using youth because you give Iqbal 2 minutes and Gore 2 minutes and these guys 2 minutes, and you give Amos time on the tour, and then you kick him out of the team and you never see him again. So it can look like you're using youth, but you're actually not. and it can look like you're not using youth and you are. I don't know what the right answer is, frankly. So we all have our own opinions on it, and we'll just have to wait and see. It is what it is. So, let's leave it at that. I'm gonna end it there. I always respect the different opinions that people have on these things, but I don't think that people can definitively state like anything, on this. I don't think you can definitively state these kinds of things. Right now, Amarim isn't looking better. He has already given more meaningful minutes to players who were not ready than Ten Hag has, if you look at it. Because Ten Hag didn't give meaningful minutes to anybody outside of Mainu and Garnacho, who are coming in full time. Aiden Heaven and Chido have now, in the FA Cup, gotten more meaningful minutes than Ten Hag gave to any youth. So I wouldn't say he's looking necessarily bad when you really deep it. When you really think it through, he's actually, in 2.5 months, whatever the circumstances, has given more meaningful minutes to youth players coming up in Chido and in Aiden Heaven than we got under Ten Hag. Because they were pretty much senior players, Garnacho and Mainu, when they were coming in. Don't know. That's my view on it anyway. I can see people having a different opinion on that. But I don't think Ten Hag gave meaningful minutes to anybody, in my opinion. I mean, he didn't even give meaningful minutes to Ahmad. I don't know. It's a funny time. Garnacho and Mainu were seniors though. They were fully called up to the senior team. They were on the full preseason tour. They were part of the senior squad going into the season. Palestri wasn't really a youth by that point. He'd been on the first team in a long time. But that's my point. Ten Hag wasted minutes on Forsen instead of giving it to actual youth and then kicked them off. But Mainu was came into the first team environment. Every manager on earth was going to play Mainu at that point in time. Every manager on earth coming into United was going to play Mainu. He'd been slated for it for 5 years. Everybody knew it, I'm saying that they were brought into the first team environment. They were viewed as part of the first team squad, and they came in. It wasn't like giving youth much of a chance. I think that Ten Hag was actually pretty bad at that. Of course, I'm biased, but I think Ten Hag was a total failure in every aspect of everything that he did. So there it is. That's the reality of it. He gave Collier minutes before his sacking also. Right. The minutes he gave to Dan Gore were not meaningful. 100% not meaningful. Absolutely not. They were not meaningful, just like they weren't for Iqbal or anybody like that. What I'm saying is, who did Ten Hag give minutes to in the youth team to become a part of the future first team? Who? Give me one player that he gave, that he helped a youth player come through. Give me one. There's none. Because Garnacho and Mainu Garnacho was in there in his first summer, and Mainu was already slated for that for multiple years. Give me one, besides Garnacho and Mainu, one youth player he actually has helped make it into the first team who was regularly at the youth level. There were none in his entire time. You did not get Mainu into the first team. You're not giving Ten Hag credit for getting Mainu into the first team. And he managed him horribly once he got into the first team. Collier, fair. Collier is probably the closest example of that. And he'll probably be sold this summer. But Collier is probably the closest example of that. Chido was not slated to be in the first team as of yet. Absolutely was not. Willy Kambuala is actually a fair answer. I'll give him credit for that. He tried to get Kambuala going in the first team and playing some minutes. I'll give him credit for that one. That's the one player. But Eric had nothing to do with Garnacho and Mainu getting to the first team. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And sold Fernandez, yeah. Kambuala, I will say, that's probably the best answer, is Willy Kambuala. Yeah, that's fair. That's probably the best answer. Willy Kambuala, yeah. Forsen was a joke. No, nobody even at the club wanted to. I'm not saying force. I'm not trying to be insulting to Forsen. The Forsen situation was a joke because he was not intended at all. He was not rated by the club to be in there. He was not rated to be in this first team at all, and he was getting minutes over Ahmad. It made no sense. It was just a nonsensical, weird personal bias thing. It was so strange. It was just like about getting a contract. It was just weird behavior. It was very, very strange behavior, that whole thing. It was just I don't get what the point of that was. Um, but that's what I'm saying. One can make the apparency of being good with youth, but they've actually done nothing. They've actually done nothing at all to assist the team. I think that Amarim is doing okay. It's been 2.5 months. He hasn't got a window. He hasn't got stuff to do. He's playing Lenny Yoro at a young age, and got Aiden Heaven on, and he's gotten Chido on a few times and things like that. Again, I'm saying you can say that a guy who was just throwing a bunch of youth players. That was my point on the whole argument. You can say that including them so you can throw them in for 2 or 5 wasted minutes is giving youth a chance. I don't think it is. It's fan service, and it was never intended to actually go anywhere with it. And it didn't do anything for us. It was just like, look at how great with youth we are, and it didn't do anything. Wheatley didn't make it. Forsen was sold. Like these were not intended, you know, and they were throwaway minutes. So what I'm saying is I think it can be more meaningful without giving minutes to 10 young players. You know, you don't have to just throw shitloads of young players in to be good with youth. That's not what being good with youth is. It's doing it right at the right times and bringing them forward. That's what being good with youth is. And that's what we will see. We will see what happens. So far, I actually think he's doing all right with it. He's not forcing the issue, which is fine. And he obviously has a certain way of going about it. But I would suspect that he will be bringing that by next season. He will be getting Chido in. He will be getting Kone in. And he will be getting, others into this team moving forward through the ranks, among others as well, for sure. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, Ten Hag played the same players every week, ran them into the ground, then they were injured, then threw on a couple young players for throwaway minutes here and there because he had to. That's how I see it. I don't think it was really meaningful youth development. Anyway, so it is what it is. We're gonna see different. We're gonna have different opinions on all of this, but I do not rate what Ten Hag did in at the youth level at all. At the slightest, but it's far too early on all of this. But I don't think that it's clear that throwing a bunch of young players that you don't rate into the squad is for sure a winning formula. There's not much evidence of that. That is not 100% clear at all. That part of it is not like I don't think that that's totally clear that that's some better thing, you know. That it's just different philosophies. There's managers who will throw a bunch of young players on, and there's managers who will take their time, and they're different. But we'll find out. Let's see if he gets asked the question. The press is going to start in 10 minutes. I got to go. It's been a long one. Again, it's just a difference of opinion. It's just a difference of opinion. People are going to see it the way I see it and the way others see it. Like I said, I'm not even sure I see it this way. I'm explaining Amarim and how he obviously operates. It's not even necessarily that I agree with it. It's just that I think we have to be capable of disagreeing with things without being certain we're always right. That's the difference. So we'll leave it at that. I think we can all be better at that. When we have differences of opinion, we don't have to be certain that we're correct. We can just keep it as an opinion and leave it because we don't know. We don't know. None of us are 100% right at any time. So we'll leave it there. Okay. Thank you all for watching today. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be back tomorrow morning and then watch along and all of that. So yes, yeah, it's winter, so there's no lawn to mow. That's why. So thank you for hanging out with me.